This is Rabbi Fischer of Young Israel of Orange County. Thank you for being with us. If you like what you watch, give us a like, please, and also pass the link on to other people. And if you don't like what you watch, just pass the link. Okay, here we go. Thanks for being here regardless. Here we go. Make this bigger. Let's try that. Come on. Okay, we'll get to it later. Where we left off last week is that David was fleeing for his life and with his people from Absalom, and they were fleeing for their lives. He had left behind 10 concubines to keep an eye on the palace. And as he was fleeing, Shimi ben Gera, a man from the tribe of Benjamin, the tribe of Saul and Jonathan, Ishbosheth, Mephibosheth, the whole way was tracking them and traveling along the road, throwing rocks at David and just cursing him. And we talked about cursing meaning not filthy profanities, but imprecations, talking about him as an evil person. You're blood. You spill blood, referencing everyone from Uriah the Hittite, who had been the original husband of Bathsheba, and referencing his own son Amnon his blood had been spilled, and there had been the assassination of Avner. Maybe David had been involved. We know he wasn't. Most everyone knew he wasn't. But as we learned on Sunday with Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, conspiracy theories are part of the human condition in certain people who have a few screws loose. And, there was a conspiracy theory that David really was behind the assassination of Avner, who had been the chief of staff of the military for the house of Saul, and had been behind the assassination of Ishbosheth, Saul's son, who was murdered while he was sleeping in the palace. So with this blood related to David, you had Shimi ben Gera screaming and yelling that you're a spiller of blood and you're an Ish B'li'al, a man of no worth, a man without values. And that's understood to be a reference to David's experience with Bathsheba. So he threw stones at David and all King David's courtiers, while all the troops and all the warriors were at David's right and left. And he just wasn't afraid. And the insults that he yelled, Ish hadamim v'ish hablial, you criminal, you who spilled blood, you of no worth. Just talked about it. God is paying you back for all your crimes. Well, for all the blood you spilled against the family of Saul. Against that refers to Avner, chief of staff, and Ishbosheth, the son of Shaul, who had become king after Shaul and his sons had died in battle with the Philistines. And so he's accusing David of those murders. Whose throne you seized. God is handing over the throne to your son Avshalom. You're in trouble because you are Ish Damim, a man who has spilled blood, a lot of blood, not just dam, singular, damim, many bloods, many people. And it was enough already. Avishai, remember the chief of staff for David is Yoav ben Tzruya, and Yoav's brother is Avishai ben Tzruya, the sons of Tzruya. And he said, why should this dead dog, curse my king? Lama yakalel hakelev hamet et Adoni HaMelech. Let me go across and cut off his head. We talked about that last week. And the king said, leave him alone. What's it to you, sons of Tzruya? This is my problem. Let him curse me. Ki Hashem amar lo kalel David. God sent him to curse me publicly humiliate me, embarrass me. Umi Omar Madua Asita Ken. And this is a very important thing, a takeaway for us as well. A very important concept that when bad things happen to you, and I talked to you more of it last week, so just a quick reminder, refresher, that we have to accept. You don't accept bad things per se. You plan intelligently, how am I going to do it differently in the future? I have the water thing, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time describing it. I have a water damage, so we had a plumber, and today it's we have to turn off the water of the house, bring the plumber, bring the guy who has a company like Surf Pro. They're going to tear out like the under carpet, and they're going to be doing some stuff. So one thing is takeaways, and maybe there's no takeaway. Maybe it is what it is. And there are strategies, plumbers telling me. And so on the one hand, you do that. And on the second hand, a believing Jew, even for an everyday type of mess up like a house leak, you pause and you think, kaparah, God is punishing me. Maybe not. Maybe another day, another reason. Maybe this is not a punishment per se. I don't know. And you can't say for sure. Like, you go through your mind, how did I sin with water? I don't know. I don't think so. But it's part of the mindset. That is how an Orthodox Jew thinks. Not that you're sure. My father died when I was 14. He was 45 of leukemia. Many people have had people they know of or their relatives have died of cancer, heart attack, earlier generations, tuberculosis, the Black Death, whatnot. And I'm walking around with my disease, and other people have their diseases, diabetes. People are on let's say, kidney machines, and things go on, and we don't know why it happens. In some cases, it just happens. In some cases, it's just part of the way God made all human beings, that we're very strong and well manufactured, but we're also a little bit we're subject, like a car, to an occasional breakdown. And sometimes it's the muffler, and sometimes it's the engine, sometimes it's the ignition, or I don't know. And things happen. Sometimes because it gets old and it breaks down. And sometimes because you haven't treated your car right. So you keep driving your car the wrong way, and you don't maintain it properly with oil changes, whatever. And then one day you got a real problem. It's the same thing with the human being. We believe that you have to maintain yourself, both your body in practical terms, eat enough of the right food, get exercise. If you're not getting enough, it should be on your mind that you got to figure out something to get some more. If you're not eating properly, you've got to come up with a game plan, et cetera, et cetera. You don't just wait till you're out of time. And then spiritually, are we playing at the top of our game? And these things remind us. And they remind us, sometimes people ask, like, how could God allow a world where there's hurricanes and earthquakes and tsunamis, all these natural disasters, wildfires, the kind that start naturally, that are not the fault of people? And Rav Victor Miller said that one way to understand some of them, not all of them, don't always assume that it's a punishment. Sometimes it is. But you're not a Navi. We're not prophets. We don't know. So just to go around and say, well, there's wildfires in Malibu because the celebrities in Hollywood are people who are immoral, you don't know. We don't know. It could be because they do not have proper forestry. And you can get into that thing. But you're always supposed to think. You're supposed to use these things to pause a moment, just like a fast day. The purpose of fasting on Shivas or B'Tammuz, Tisha B'Av, Asar B'Tevet, Tzom Gedalia, purpose of fasting is not just to go a day without eating. It's to be weak a few times a year, and that makes you remember the Beit HaMikdash. If you focus your mind that way, that when the Beit HaMikdash came about, destroyed by the Romans, they starved us, and the Babylonians, they starved us. They cut off the city, and the city was on fire, and people would be massacred. It's to get us into that mindset. And when there's a kaparah, when there's some kind of a bad thing, what in secular law they call an act of God, and of course in religious law as well, when there's an act of God. So it's supposed to get us thinking. And maybe there's no reason per se. And Rav Victor Miller said, part of the reason he made a world like that is that people should pause and realize the miracles that the whole world is not like that every day of the week, that the world is even around. Forget about the climate activists and all of that stuff. That derech hateva, the natural course of events, the world, you didn't need carbon this or whatever they want to say in the Al Gore movie that over the course of time is proven untrue. At least that movie, because we're still around. The idea that the things of the climate, the world should have pretty much self-destroyed anyway. Between tsunamis, earthquakes, if you didn't have God Almighty protecting us so that there was not an earthquake every day all over the place, with tsunamis, with whatever you want to come up with, everything, tornadoes and monsoons, and there's something for every letter in the alphabet. And they should be happening all the time, not just once in 10 years an earthquake, or 5 years, or once in 5 years, 20 years, 50 years a tsunami. It should be happening every day. There was something that almost, they got everybody really scared, or tried to, in Southern California about a week or two ago with a possible tsunami. And it didn't happen. And so these things need to be part of our mindset. We should have it in our minds that God created a world, and there are a lot of things that can go wrong. So the idea, let's get back to the text first. All right. So David here is showing us how you react when natural disasters happen, or your own personal problem, like my leak right now in that room or whatever. And you pause and you think, is it a kaparah? Am I being given an atonement? Am I being tested by God? Or maybe, just maybe, the pipe is a certain age and it was time. And that's okay. And maybe the real takeaway, and I'm not just talking about myself, I'm talking about you. Maybe the real takeaway is not oy gewalt, but Baruch Hashem, that another person in another situation with the same pipe and the same thing might have ended up having like a Titanic kind of flood and a disaster, whereas we're getting off pretty light, all in all. I even found another suit and shirt and tie. So it's an important way to look at all disasters, public and private. One more word on this, September 11, I've talked about it in the past. This is a context to mention it again also. When September 11 happened, the September 11, Jerry Falwell, and he's passed away. I always liked Jerry Falwell because he really brought to America the idea, along with John Hagee, of Christian evangelicals being incredibly pro-Israel and very, very nice to Jews, very loving to Jewish people. So I have a very warm spot for Jerry Falwell, who passed away some time ago. But he made a fool of himself. After 9/11, he said, it happened because America has so many abortions. And I know that's very nice if he's a prophet and that fits in with his theology and our theology too, Orthodox Jews. There are too many abortions in America that are mass murder. It's mass murder, it is. But still, to say that's why 9/11 happened, it's like I have a different theory. My theory is that 9/11 happened because George Bush, the president, thought that the Saudi Arabians are our friends, made special arrangements for Saudi Arabians to come into America and even go to flight school without even being citizens. Go to flight school. We taught them how to fly planes. And the famous story that the guys involved in 9/11, 15 of the 19 who commandeered the 4 planes were Saudi Arabians. And they all were registered. The media did a little investigating later. None of them ever attended the class on how to land a plane. No, 15 Arabs, all from Saudi Arabia, learning how to fly, none of them coming to class to learn how to land. Duh, at least a question mark. So that could be another reason for 9/11 that has nothing to do with abortion. So you always have to be very careful. If my dad passed away and he was a righteous man of leukemia at age 45, and if you know someone in your family who is sick, God forbid, or alive but goes through sorrows and all kinds of pain, and on the other hand, some evil person lives longer, we believe that everything gets straightened out in Olam Haba, the world to come. But this is the way a person looks at things. And David knows he sinned. He has the extra advantage, if you want to call it an advantage, that the Navi of the generation, the prophet of the generation, Nathan, was sent by God to tell him, you sinned, and you are going to be punished, and there will be bloodshed in your family household, and it will continue and continue because of what you did. So that's what's going on here. David is thinking already, is this also part of what Natan had warned him about? Is the Avshalom rebellion part of that payment for having done what he did with Bathsheba and Uriah? And the commentators go beyond that. And they say, very interesting, that the rabbis frown on, and the Torah frowns on, taking a non-Jewish beautiful woman as a wife, as a wartime captive, as he did with Ma'acha, who gave him 2 children. Tamar was born from the original pregnancy before she converted, and Avshalom, the rebel, was born from the second pregnancy after she converted. So the rabbis suggest that Avshalom, who causes so much damage, is the son of the Yafat Toar, the beautiful woman from the king of Geshur, the daughter of the king of Geshur, whom David took in battle. And then if you'll say, but wait a second, Rav, you spent so much time teaching us in the Torah itself, the wording for how it's allowed. There are certain, I'm bouncing back one more time, that there are certain laws that are allowed but are not desirable, but are God's concessions to human beings. And so that there should never be rape in battle the way there are with all the other nations. So God made the concession of the halacha of the of the Yafat Toar. And there are other such mitzvot in the Torah that God prefers you don't use, like a divorce. The Gemara is so clear that in heaven they cry when the husband and wife get divorced. So why is there a divorce? Well, it's not the best, but sometimes I've been through a divorce, and I can tell you absolutely it was, to be appropriate and to say this the right way, it was one of the most important, positive things that happened in my life. I had to do it. And I'm willing to say, perhaps, that for her also it was a great thing. We needed to go different paths. It wasn't just a small thing. And we had an amicable divorce without even using divorce lawyers. So how about the bitter divorces? So the Torah as a concession says, ideally you get married and you don't get divorced. And so you will not observe, you will not fulfill 613 Torah laws, because 2 of them are divorce related. So you will not fulfill the 613. The only way you can fulfill the 613 is if you get divorced. But there are others you also can never do. There are some that apply to men, women don't do it. There are some apply to women, men can never do it. Some apply only to a Kohen, non-Kohanim can't do it. Some apply to non-Kohanim. So nobody can do 613 anyway. But the idea is that Torah has certain laws that are defaults, that, all right, you shouldn't, it's not the best, but under these circumstances, it's allowed. And so David married a woman in battle under the halacha. And remember, the halacha makes it so, tries to push you away from marrying her, make her bald, right? Cut her all of her hair and make her sit there and like in shiva. You marry her anyway, all right, but you end up with Avshalom. So David takes all of this that's happening, and he says, "Let Shimi ben Gera. I didn't invite him to follow us and curse me, but leave him alone. This is God punishing me. I'm sure of it. Umi Omar Madua Asita King, because Hashem Amar Lo Kalel David, he's abusing me only because God told him to abuse David. Vayomer David al Avishai vel kol avadav hinei v'ni asher yatsa mimei." David says to his generals, my own son who came from my loins, Mevakesh nafshi, is trying to kill me. Va'afki ata with 9 ben hayimini hanichalo v'kalel. So this Benjaminite, leave him alone. Ki amar lo Hashem, I'm sure God told him to do this. Ulay yira Hashem ba'avoni be'eni. I taught you about ketiv and kri, that some words in the Tanakh are spelled a certain way in the text and always are spelled that way. That's called the kri, the way it's written. The ketiv, the way it's written from the word kotev, and the kri is the way that word is read, with vowels different from the way you would think. You would think it's ba'oni or ba'avoni. Maybe God sees my sin or my suffering, and yet the kri is ba'eni. Maybe God sees what I see with my eye. And it can mean both. Maybe he sees my suffering, and I am paying the punishment for my Batsheva sin with Uriah. And maybe he sees what I see, how much it's hurting me. Ve'shiv Hashem li tova tachat kilulato hayom hazeh. And maybe God, if you leave this fellow alone and let him keep cursing and cursing and cursing, and humiliating me, embarrassing me, shaming me, maybe God will pay me back with good. So that in Olam Hazeh, this world, I will have paid my price, do the crime, do the time. I will have paid my price, and Ba'olam Hazeh Haba, in the future world, this will not be on my register. And that's the way an Orthodox Jew thinks. Really, really, all of us, everything. That's the way we think. We don't know for sure. We cannot be Jerry Falwells and say with certainty, with no basis, this is why that happened. But it is appropriate to wonder whether certain things happen for reasons that either, number one, are the inevitable natural results of certain things that have nothing to do with sin, or whether alternatively, maybe they are a punishment from God. So David and his men continued on their way. Shimi holech b'tzel hahar leumato, and the whole time Shimi continues across the road, but within shouting distance, following them step by step. Haloch v'kalel, v'yasakel ba'avanim lumato, continuing to curse and hurl rocks, boulders, really big stones at him. The ipar ba'afar, and just throwing dirt, the dust that there is around the stones. Think of a road, not roads like nowadays in a well-maintained city, but roads in the old days from like the Westerns, from the 1800s, the John Wayne movies with the station wagons. Think of those kind of roads. So there's going to be rocks and boulders, and there's going to be a lot of dust. And the king and all his retinue finally reach a point where they feel they safely are distant enough right now from Avshalom that vayinafesh sham, they can take a rest. And they're ayefim, they're exhausted. So let's just look at these words a moment. Ayef means exhausted, tired. Vayinafesh, we say that word in the Shabbat Kiddush. Vayom HaShvi Shabbat Vayinafesh. God on the seventh day, Shabbat rested, and Yinafesh. Yinafesh is from the word nefesh. It's like coming back to life. Like seriously, there's a Hebrew and Yiddish word machaya. Let's say it's 110 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and you're kerplotzing, and someone gives you a nice cold drink of water or lemonade, and you start drinking it, and you might say, it's a machaya, which is both Yiddish and mechaya, Hebrew, from the word chai. It's sort of like, it reinvigorates me. It gives me my life back. And that's vayinafesh, that you have a nefesh, is your body. The neshama is your soul. The nefesh is your body, your life. Nefesh tachat nefesh, where it says in the Torah 3 places, ayin tachat ayin, shen tachat shen, regel tachat regel, kiviyah tachat kiviyah, nefesh tachat nefesh. An eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, wound for a wound, a life for a life. So a nefesh is a corporeal life. Our bodies. And vayinafesh is like you come back to life. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world in 6 days, and on the 7th day, Shavat vayinafash. In the 7th day, metaphorically, he not only rested, but he came back to life. Obviously, it's a metaphor. God doesn't need rest. God doesn't need to come back to doesn't need to take a deep breath. But it's to use language that help us better fathom what is being described about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's what happens here with David as well. Vayinafesh, that they're absolutely breathless, fleeing for their lives from Avshalom and his men, and not knowing whether they're going to make it before he catches them. Turns out he did not race after them initially. So they got away and they came back to life. Okay, I always tell you, I use the Safari. This is such an incredible tool for use in teaching on Zoom, but they have a very poor translation. So whenever it needs it, so the word rested would apply in a different way, like Shavat, Vayishbot. Vayinafesh would be more like they came back to life. Okay. Meanwhile, that's what about Avshalom and his men? Avshalom v'chol ha'am ish Yisrael, ba'u Yerushalayim, v'Achitophel ito. Okay. Avshalom and his people have now marched into the evacuated Jerusalem. David no longer is in his palace. He and all his men and family and his wives and all but 10 of his concubines have evacuated Jerusalem, as well as the palace itself. And he left the 10 pilakshim, the 10 concubines behind, according to the text, to keep an eye on the palace, to watch over the palace, dust the rooms, and make sure there's no water pipe bursting, and just keep an eye on the place if anything needs upkeep. It also seems like a very optimistic thing not to expect that Avshalom is going to go and take the palace, but that's what we have here. And Avshalom enters Yerushalayim, and there's no one in the palace, and he's there with Achitophel. Achitophel, we've talked about him the last 2 weeks on that list that I would show you that I made. Achitophel is the wisest of all men. He's a traitor to David and a loyalist to Avshalom. He had been David's absolute right-hand man, always gave David the most important counsel and advice, stayed behind in Jerusalem when David and his retinue fled and turned to be part of Avshalom's rebellion. He was wise beyond words, and to have him, now he's not a Kohen, but he's as good as a Kohen. It's like, which is better in a chessboard, the horse, the knight, or the castle, the rook? And people can discuss all these different equivalents and how many points this is worth and that's worth. One Achitophel is like a Kohen Gadol. He doesn't have the Urim and Tumim, but he's almost just as good. If you have a question, okay, the Urim and Tumim, you ask God directly through the Kohen Gadol, and God answers directly. And Achitophel is so wise, if you ask him, he's not communicating with God, but the Tanakh tells us he's giving answers, advice, counsel, as good as though from God, the best counsel. So he's there with Avshalom in Jerusalem. My mind is racing very, very quickly for a moment. Obviously, you don't want to go into this too far. When Napoleon took Russia, it was a disaster. Napoleon was trying to conquer the world, whatever, like Hitler 100 years later. These guys get these megalomaniacal things that it's not enough to be the president of your country. You have to own other countries, like you're playing Risk. And so he's got to get Russia. And he was doing quite well. And he was conquering a lot of places. And then he went into Russia and his men got caught in a blizzard. And it destroyed his armies. And on top of that, the Russians pulled a shtick on him. The Russian government leadership evacuated Moscow before he got there. The idea was you wouldn't know it watching Israel fight Hamas, never. But the idea is when you fight a war, you don't win until the other guy concedes, gives up, surrenders. When the Civil War in America, finally at Appomattox Courthouse, Ulysses S. Grant, they brought in Robert E. Lee, and Robert E. Lee, it was very painful, surrendered. And that's how it goes. You surrender. And then Grant was very humane and sensitive and let Robert E. Lee and his men leave with their swords and their guns, which was contrary to usually what happens when they would surrender at war. Didn't want to embarrass it. Okay, so that's what happens. You surrender. And that's what's going on. Until Hamas surrenders, it's never going to be over. And what happened is the government of Russia, under the Tsars, decided to evacuate Moscow so that when Napoleon got there, there would be no one to surrender to him. And he was caught in a blizzard. He was furious, and he had no plan. He had no plan B. There was no one to surrender, so the war wasn't officially won. And the snow, and his men are dying. Interesting piece of history. So, also Cornwallis surrendered. That was also a famous one in Yorktown, the Revolutionary War. And on the day of the surrender, whereas General Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant, Cornwallis made a decision that the British are too great and proud for the general in charge to surrender. So Cornwallis, having conveyed to the Americans we're surrendering today in Yorktown, did not present himself, but his number two to surrender. And when Washington was told that the number two is arriving to surrender, Washington said, well, then let him surrender to my number two. We also are great, and if he's not there, I don't have to be there. Let history record that they surrendered not even to the commander-in-chief. They had been beaten so badly. Interesting how war works. So they make it to Yerushalayim. Vayhi kasher bo Chushai arki rea David al Avshalom. So now it's interesting. Just as Avshalom is arriving with Achitophel, his genius, seriously counselor, arrives Chushai. Remember Chushai? Chushai was that elderly, weak man, presumably in his late 70s, in an era when people died by 70. So he had lived longer than people do, and very weak physically, but his mind was still very sharp. And he was a close friend of David. It's very unusual. Normally it'll refer to someone as, let's say, Chushai Ach David, the brother of David, David, his uncle, his whatever. You don't see that. I looked for commentary, couldn't find anything that I thought I could share. Chushai, the friend of David. They want to convey why he's there. They want to convey that he's doing something extraordinary, that David needs a spy. You will remember from previous classes, he's already got 4 spies there. He's got the 2 Kohen Gadol, Kohanim Gedolim. He's got Sadok and Evyatar, and we've learned about them and the slight difference. The lineages that Evyatar will, his Kahuna Gedola will end before that of Tzadok. And each one has a son who also was sent to be messenger boys back and forth to David from the fathers in Jerusalem. And that's 4. And David sent Chushai. And I was just, this has nothing to do with nothing. And I'm sorry if I'm wasting 5 or 3 minutes of your time, but it's the only thing that came to mind. I'm looking for a comment, can't find a comment. So I just bear with me. And if you don't know baseball and don't like baseball, I apologize. The Jonathan Miller, I believe his name is Jonathan Miller, is the longtime baseball announcer of the San Francisco Giants. And I think he's still in the business, John Miller, San Francisco Giants. And this is about 10 years ago. And the best player on the Giants was the catcher named Buster Posey. And they had 1 or 2 other superstars. They once had, depending on how you relate to steroids in baseball, they had the all-time home run champ or the biggest cheater. But Buster Posey was so there's a game, and John Miller is calling it, and Buster Posey hits a grand slam. Hunter Pence hits a grand slam home run. And the great John Miller, this TV broadcaster of years and years, starts to announce, excited like crazy, the grand slam. And he's saying that it's Buster Posey who hit it, but it was Hunter Pence who hit it. See what he did. And you'll see why this comes to mind. This is Meshuggah. My mind, I apologize. I just, who am I going to share this with? I share it with Denise. Got to share it with more people than just Denise. After all, it's been seen by how many? 56,000 people. So now it's 56,020. This is John Miller being interviewed about his career.
Maybe I wasn't that happy with how I did today, or I didn't handle a big moment just the way I wanted to. Well, I always have another one tomorrow. I don't have to wait a week. Swinging. There's a high.
Remember, again, the home run is by Hunter Pence. But in his mind, it's Buster Posey.
Drive deep into left center field. It's on its way. Adios! Pelota! A grand slam for Buster Posey's good friend, Hunter Pence.
Did you catch what happened there? He started saying for Buster Posey, realized he was wrong, and he had to finish the sentence in a way that would show he knows what he's talking about. For Buster Posey's good friend, Hunter Pence. And then the player named Hunter Pence changed his Twitter homepage, Hunter Pence, Buster Posey's good friend. So that's just baseball lore, Lore. Let's get back to work and learning. So we have Chushai Re'eh David. Chushai, I don't think ever hit in a grand slam, but David's good friend. And he arrived to Avshalom, having been sent by David. Yechi HaMelech, Yechi HaMelech. That is the way they say in Hebrew. To this day, long live the king. Long live the king. Now, we don't have kings these days in Israel, but that's how long live the king is said in Hebrew. Yechi HaMelech. So you don't have the word long. You have HaMelech is the king. Yechi, may he live. May the king live. That's how in Hebrew they say long live the king. Yechi HaMelech. Okay. So he greets the king, and he greets him as the king. So Avshalom looks at him and realizes and knows that Chushai was incredibly close to my dad, David. And he regards my dad as the king. Holy smokes. Here he is in Yerushalayim. My dad has run for his life. And here's Chushai coming, greeting me as the king. Long live the king, long live the king. It's a very emotional moment for Avshalom, and it has a deep impact on him. Vayomer Avshalom Chushai, Zechas Decha et Re'echa. And Avshalom says that this is your chesed, this is the kindness with which you treat your friend. And that's why I guess the text was emphasizing that he's the Re'eh David, that he's David's friend. You're not only like treasonous as a citizen, but you're stabbing your friend in the back. Lama lo halachta et re'echa. Why did you not go with your friend? Which would you expect more? That a person in the face of a civil war, that a person would stick with his governmental leader, would stick with his friend? Would a person break from his friend because there's a civil war? It's an interesting question. Friendship carries a tremendous amount. It's not the only factor. We know that during the American Civil War, brothers fought brothers. You had families where one lived in Alabama, one lived in New York, and so that one fought in Dixie and that fought for the Union. But it's interesting, because anyway, Avshalom's saying, not only would I have expected you to remain loyal to David as one of his subjects, but you're his closest friend. Am I supposed to believe that you have abandoned him for me? Vayomer Chushai Avshalom. And so Chushai says, well, look at it this way, lo, well, ki asher b'char Hashem v'ha'am hazeh v'chol ish Yisrael lo eya v'ito eshev. So Chushai says, lo, no, don't expect that I would be with David now, because Asher b'char Hashem, he whom God has chosen, v'ha'am hazeh, he whom the nation has chosen, v'chol ish Yisrael, he whom every individual in Israel has chosen. I mean, I'm your father's friend, but I'm looking. God has cast his vote. The nation is a people, and as individuals, everyone's with you. And here we come again with a kativ and a kari. How is it kari? Lo with a vav. Lo means him, H-I-M. Lo with an aleph, that's kativ. That's how it's written in the text. Although it's pronounced this way, which is the same. It's pronounced that way, but that means no. Lo, no. Lo, him. So let's see it both ways. So Chushai says to Avshalom, no, that one is not in dispute. It's the only way it's done. There's no different on the kativ. No, he whom God has chosen, and the nation is chosen, and all people in Israel. Let's first take it this way. Lo eheya, to him I shall be. my loyalty stands with him. And this implies that he's thinking something else in order not to lie. He means something else as he says it. Lo eya, I will not be with him. So it sounds like he's saying, with him I will be, but he's meaning I will not be. V'ito eshev, and I will sit with him. And Avshalom takes that as a declaration of fealty, loyalty from Chushai, V'hasheni. And secondly, Chushai says, Lemi ani evod. Halo lifnei beno. Chushai says, as a lifelong servant of David, that's what I do. I'm a servant within the family. I'm his dear friend. He could always count on me. And now you can. Halo lifnei beno, it's appropriate for me to continue my service in the service of his son, Vino ben Shalo. Ka'asher avadati lifnei avicha, just as I served, avad to serve, avadati I served, just as I served before your father. Kain eheyeh lefanecha, thus I shall be for you. Vayomer Avshalom el Achitophel. Well, Avshalom is blown away by the new loyalty of Chushai, turns to his number one advisor, Achitophel, and he basically looks at both of them. Talks plural, havu, instead of hav. Instead of hav lecha, havu lechem. Etza manasa. I'm asking the two of you for advice. What's the next step? Vayomer Achitophel el Avshalom. So Achitophel, the man who's like a Kohen Gadol, with a wisdom that he almost knows what God's thinking, says to Avshalom, here's what I recommend. Number one, bo el pilakshe avicha. Have physical intercourse with each of the 10 concubines of your father. Asher hiniach lishmor habayit. The 10 concubines whom he left behind to watch over the palace. Have physical intercourse with them in a way that is public before the nation. V'shama kol Yisrael ki niv'ashta et avicha. And all of Israel will hear that you have utterly destroyed, brought down your father. He may be alive, but he's nullified. You have nullified him as the king. To have gone with a daring to have public intercourse with each of 10 women with whom your father has, and that's a king, and that will strengthen everyone who's with you. The commentators ask about that, and they say the following. The commentators say that there's a concern, and today I'm not reading, I've prepared all the tabs for all the commentators, but since I devoted a certain amount of time in my intro to attitudes when setbacks occur, I want to incorporate those commentaries into the text itself, and that way we cover more ground and we don't lose out a single commentator. The commentators ask about that. So this is a guy, Achitophel's got great ideas, great advice. What's this business of telling Avshalom, like, your first official act should be to have physical intercourse with all 10 of the women in a public way? And they believe this is what he was up to. In our own recent experience about a year or two ago, when America left Afghanistan, so what happened to the Afghanis who had advised America? We had interpreters, translators, spies among the native Afghanis who stood with and advised the Americans for years while we were in Afghanistan. And when we left Afghanistan, and you all remember what that was, What happened to those interpreters? Remember how all the Afghanis were trying to get onto the planes? And even, oh my God, those 2 or 3 people who, as the plane started to take off, held onto the plane from the outside. And then as the speed of the plane, they couldn't hold on, and they fell. You actually watched on the nightly news Afghanis falling to their deaths from the sky. We left behind a lot of good people that were our people and risked their lives for us. And we did it in Iraq. We've done it, America has done it a bunch of times. And it's a challenge for Israel as well. What do you do with your spies in Iran? Do you evacuate them? Do you leave them behind because you're sure that they're safe and that they have not been exposed? It's a thing. So the rabbis say that Achitophel perceived that the people of Israel were not certain that they should reveal an alliance with Avshalom out of their fear that if Avshalom backs down, does not get killed, does not get beaten, but chooses to back down in the rebellion against David, when push comes to shove, he backs down. Like it happens that, I don't want to take up a lot of time, but you have American presidents saying, if you don't do this, then next week there'll be hell to pay, and there isn't hell to pay. Or if you don't do that, there's going to be this, and if you don't do that, there's going to be this, and then they back down. And it's Trump does that. And remember Obama with his famous red line with Syria, where he told Bashar Assad that if you have chemical weapons or this, that, the other, this is a line you dare not cross, and then Obama backed down. And to be fair and keep it apolitical, Trump has backed down on stuff too. And of course, Biden, and there have been plenty who have backed down. So the thing here is, aside from whether Avshalom is going to back down, what about the people? You're asking me to express loyalty, to come out and announce my backing. And it's not that my endorsement means so much. I'm not like a senator or a congressman who you're trying to get my endorsement, or a big celebrity like when Kamala Harris was paying $1 million for endorsements. So she paid Beyonce, was it $1 million? And Al Sharpton $1 million, $1 million for you and $1 million for you for endorsements. Here, it's not about $1 million endorsements. It's about people. I'm just a schnook in the city. No one's looking for my endorsement. Do I come out? Do I come out and say, I'm for Avshalom? Do I say I'm for David? And you don't want to get killed. By the way, this is one of the issues. Again, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but it's one of the dilemmas that faces every Arab in Gaza. If an Arab in Gaza, let's make believe, and I emphasize make believe, let's make believe there are innocent civilians in Gaza. It takes a lot of making believe, a lot of fantasizing. But let's make believe there are innocent civilians in Gaza. So they're caught in a situation, because if they're really so good, you would expect that they would come out against Hamas. Not that they would join Israel. Israel, they can regard Israel as their enemy because they're Arabs, and it's eternal for them. They're never going to be. But they could come out against Hamas. They could have mass demonstrations calling for the end of Hamas, because these crazy people of Hamas have caused 75% of our land. It's not their land, it's Jewish land, but they think it's their land. It's caused 75% of our land to be strafed into pancakes, and all the devastation and the pseudo hunger and pseudo famine and all this stuff. All right. So you would expect that there would be a movement of Arabs demonstrating against Hamas. Yes, we're anti-Zionist, but we'd like a different leadership. Why doesn't anyone do it? Or very few. Because they don't trust Israel to beat Hamas. Israel's had 5 wars with Hamas and 5 times swore to take them down and 5 times left without taking them down. So if I'm an Arab Muslim in Gaza and I come out with my family and friends, neighbors against Hamas in a public rally, and then eventually Netanyahu says, we said we were going to take down Hamas, but we wanted the hostages, so we're agreeing in return for the hostages, we're going to have a full ceasefire, and we're all pulling out. The next day, Hamas makes a list of every person who ever came out in public against Hamas, and they kill them in a horrible ways. They torture them to death. They are horrible. I mean, there's no word in any language that describes how painful they are when they kill people, to hurt people. So people are hesitant to go out in public. They just don't know what to do. They don't trust Netanyahu. If Israel really this time ultimately takes down Gaza City and truly somehow or other gets Hamas out, you can have all these Arabs saying, we were with you all along. We always were with you. So, and those copies of Mein Kampf in our house, we were getting them off the streets. So anyway, in the same way, the rabbis, according to the Navi commentators, Tanakh commentators believe that there was great doubt among the citizens of Jerusalem as to whether Avshalom would really see through the overthrow of David, whether he really would kill David, he's his father, and whether he really would oust David, like leave him in exile if he doesn't kill him, or will he work out a co-partnership, a co-governing. David's just about age of death anyway. People die at 70. David, I believe, is within 5 years of the average end of a lifetime in those days. And so if he's going to pass away soon, Avshalom may become persuaded by his advisors like Chushai and Achitophel, work something out with your father. Your father would love to come back to Jerusalem, and he's got his wives, he's going to care about them and his children. He wants them to live well. He wants his wives, his concubines. He knows where he's at. He knows the lay of the land. He may very well agree to be the nominal king and allow you to be the guy running the prime minister. And you run the place with an understanding that in 3 years, 5 years, you'll become the king. For the public in Jerusalem, people are not sure. And they're hesitant to come out for Avshalom out of fear that if Avshalom does that, if David may kill them as disloyal to him, and if they come out for David, so Achitophel says, rape the 10 concubines. Because when you rape those 10 concubines, it's clear to everyone in Israel that that's it. There's not going to be a peace plan. There's not going to be a ceasefire. If you rape those 10 women, such a chutzpah and such, that's it. And so that's the wisdom of Achitophel. As we close it down now, go back to the text for a moment. There's 2 interesting things I'll bring to attention as we close it down. This is so clear, so obvious, not to me, I don't think in those terms, I'm sure not to most of you, but this is so obvious to the inner circle that, wow, what a great idea, that they don't even ask for Chushai's opinion. Chushai is the one that David sent. They don't even ask for a second opinion. It's like, duh, of course, rape the 10 concubines, of course. And that'll let everybody know this thing is not, there's no turning back. And so catch number 1, because next week in Yirtzeh Hashem, we're going to see that on the next important question, again, Achitophel will be sought, and then they will ask Chushai, and what's your opinion? So we'll wait till we'll notice that. But here, let's finish up by just looking at that pasuk, that verse. Okay. Okay. Vayomer Achitophel el Avshalom. Achitophel says to Absalom, Bo el pilache avicha. Go physical intercourse with your father's 10 concubines, asher hiniach lishmor habayit, which your dad left behind to watch the palace. V'shama kol Yisrael ki nivashta avicha. This is key. This is key in English, K-E-Y, because there's K, Kufiyot. And all of Israel will hear. They're not all going to see. First of all, I mean, how's everybody in Israel going to see what's going to happen? And so, but they will hear. And that will strengthen, from chazak, that will strengthen all those with you. They will be strengthened to go out on record that they're on Avshalom's side, because they no longer will have the slightest uncertainty as to whether you're going the full distance. So, Vayatu, and with this pasuk, Vayatu la Avshalom ha'oel al Hagag. Now, how does he have intercourse with all these women, quote unquote, in public? Because after all, in Judaism, there's a level of modesty. Start thinking about, at a proper Jewish wedding, the yichud room. After the chuppah, and they break the glass, and they write and they recite, Imeshkafech Yerushalayim Tishkach Yimini. If I forget thee, Jerusalem, may my right hand be forgotten. After that, everybody leads the bride and groom, the chassan and kala, chatan v'kala, into the yichud room, where the two of them are alone for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And then they come out. And the reason for the yichud room is that's the way that we say that the whole assemblage has been witness that the husband and wife had physical intimacy. We all know that in 99% of marriages, none of that actually happens in the yichud room. The husband and wife, the chassan and kala, have been fasting all day. And the first thing they want when they walk into that yichud room is not physical intimacy, but a cookie with a cup of orange juice or water. The water, the cookie, and that's what they go for. And they only have 5 minutes before they have to come and appear before everyone, and the cookie beckons. However, for halachic purposes, a man and woman don't go into a room and close the door. It's not done unless they're married. When you understand the halachic concept of that, so then the idea of yichud, so the fact that there's a public walking into a room, male and female, they're married. So what they did with Avshalom is they set up a big gigantic tent on the roof of the palace. So you could see from the ground, from a distance, the horizon, the roof of the palace. Just as if you've ever been in Yerushalayim, you could see from some distance the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount, for example. And Avshalom walked into the tent with one concubine at a time. And that was like a yichud room. That's what they saw, and it was understood that he had physical intimacy. Not that they physically saw it, but they saw him and the concubine walk into the tent, and that was that. And that was Achitophel's recommendation, and we continue, God willing, next week. Thank you so much for being with us. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.